Welcome back, Sebastian here. So moving on to Mercedes, fourth in the F1 Constructors Championship. For Mercedes, it's been a really up and down season in Formula One. Season started off with quite a struggle. They were definitely the fourth team, not really scoring podiums. They were basically 6th, 7th, 8th at best most weekends, but they've come on really strongly the last month or two. They've actually won 3 of the last 4 races of the season heading into the summer break. So again, they definitely seem like poised to be a team to really make some movement forward in the Constructors' Championship rankings if things continue this way. Before we get into that though, let's take a look at their 2 drivers, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, and take a look at the head-to-head statistics. So qualifying is definitely the one stat that's in favor of Russell. 10-4 in Russell's favor with a median qualifying delta of 0.071 seconds, so just under a tenth of a second. An average starting position for Hamilton 7.12 and for Russell 6.47. So I think it's pretty clear at this point that Russell is definitely the better of the 2 drivers over 1 lap, and it's definitely a battle that over their 3 years as teammates together has progressively gone more in Russell's favor. But Hamilton's still very, very strong on race day, as a lot of these other stats will indicate. So average finishing position 5.81 for Hamilton, and for Russell 6.00. Looking at the championship, Hamilton 150 points and Russell 116. So for Hamilton, 6th in the championship, Russell in 8th. But a bit surprisingly, for the average on my power ranking, it's actually the other way around. So Russell 6.2, which is tied for 3rd with Charles Leclerc, and for Hamilton 7.6, which is actually 7th. So why would those 2 numbers be different? And we'll get into that in a second. But looking at points above expected, this kind of is part looking at this part of the reason why I think Russell's been a bit better is one of the interpretations of this next stat. So for points above expected, Hamilton 33.81 in the positive, and for Russell 17.75 in the negative. Converted into percentages, 132% for Hamilton, 86% for Russell. And for podiums, I've added the podiums and win for the last 4 teams because these are the only teams that have any podiums or wins so far this season. So for Hamilton, 4 podiums, for Russell only 2 wins, Hamilton 2, Russell 1. Of course, the big story coming into the summer break was, the fact that Russell lost that win at the Belgian Grand Prix because he had an underweight car. Again, that gave the win to his teammate Hamilton. That was basically a 36 point swing, basically just right there. And then, of course, taking into account the results of the British Grand Prix, where Hamilton won, Russell DNF because of a mechanical issue. And that's 50 points right there that Hamilton has from races where Russell scored 0 points, completely out of his control. And again, it's those 50 points would make a massive difference when you look at the fact that, if you ignore those 2 races, Russell would be ahead 116 to Hamilton on 100. And again, before this resurgence from Mercedes, so basically going into the British Grand Prix weekend, Russell had basically been a little bit ahead of Hamilton consistently throughout the season. It's only the last 4 races where that narrative's really, switched on its head. And again, I do think Hamilton has had a good season though. Again, power rankings is well into the top 10, and last 5 or 6 races or so, he's definitely been one of the best drivers in that stretch. And again, the points above expected stat does show, he is scoring a lot more points than you would expect. Again, some of that could be luck, but again, a lot of that is going to be skill itself. And again, with Russell, he's lost that win because of the disqualification, and just taking that right there. That race is still included in this statistic. I included Hamilton's disqualification, calculating last year's statistic for the, of course, that was from the American Grand Prix because of excessive plank wear. And again, if you just gave Russell that win, he'd be above 100%, and he would be in the positive. But again, both drivers I think have been good. Russell is definitely the better driver in qualifying. Hamilton, I think, arguably is the better driver over a race distance, but again, still very, very close between the 2 of them. And there's still enough races left that this could easily go either way at the end when it comes to the end of the season. Now, taking a look at Mercedes, the constructor has been very, very up and down the last 4 seasons. Of course, 2021, the oldest year that we're looking at, they of course were constructors champions. The last year under the old rule set, 613.5 points. Thank you, Spa. Average pole gap 0.112 seconds, and average minimum finishing position 2.36, which again was better than Red Bull that year. 2020, and of course, 2022 going into the new regulations, it's been a bit of a struggle. First year suffering a lot with porpoising, bouncing. They finished third in the constructors, 515 points. Average pole gap 0.793 seconds. Average minimum finishing position 3.5. And again, that season started off very, very poorly. They were slugging it out with Alfa Romeo of all teams for the first 5 or 6 races. But again, by that second half of the season, by the end of the season, they were generally the second best team after Red Bull, and again were generally faster than Ferrari on most tracks. So expectations going into 2023 were quite high. 2023 definitely did not go as planned, a bit of a rough start, but that being said, they were pretty consistent. They were definitely a step off of the Red Bull. They were generally consistently the third best team over the course of the season. It's just that the team that was usually second best changed so often. Started with Aston Martin, then it was McLaren, then it was Ferrari, then it was McLaren as well. But they end up with second in the constructors that year, 409 points, average pole gap 0.459 seconds, and average minimum finishing position 4.36. So despite that being worse in 2022, they still end up second in the constructors. Pole gap was better, about 0.3 quicker than the year before, so again, qualifying did improve last year. And again, 2024, though, that qualifying statistic did not improve as of the mid-season point. But that being said, fourth in the constructors, 266 points. They're exactly 100 points behind McLaren, who are second, and they're about 80 points or so behind Ferrari. So again, 10 races left to go. Is it doable? I do think it is. I think if they're able to be the fastest team, or second fastest team and Red Bull's fastest team, if they're able to maximize their points, maximize their results, I do think that in a best case scenario, I do see them potentially still challenging and getting second in the Constructors' Championship. But pole gap 0.487 seconds, a bit of a step back from last year, but again a bit similar to 2022. They've come on leaps and bounds as the season's progressed, and as you have more races in the second half of the season, I expect that number to improve and probably end up being about 3.5 tenths, 3 tenths of a second when it's all said and done. An average minimum finishing position, again 4.08, so an improvement on last season, but again still worse than 2022. Again, with that added competition from McLaren, it's harder for that statistic to be in the twos like it was in the 2021. And again, like I've alluded to, development for Mercedes over the course of the season has definitely been one of their bright spots. When you compare average starting position, average finishing position through the first 6 races to where we are now after 14 races, basically routinely across the board, it's an improvement. So for starting position, for Hamilton 9.38, for Russell 7.88, both of those are big improvements. Both of the current numbers are big improvements over where we were after 6 races. So for Hamilton, 7.12 compared to 9.38. So again, qualifying on average 2, or at least starting 2 positions ahead compared to after 6 races. Then we look at average finishing position, 8.29, 7.43. For Hamilton, that's 2.4 positions roughly. I think 2.5 positions roughly. There of improvement there. So again, for Russell, 7.43 compared to 6, so 1.4 positions improvement there. So you're seeing big improvements both in qualifying and in race finishes compared to the first quarter of the season. So again, it'll be really curious to see how things go second half of the season. Mercedes are arguably the best team in F1 right now. Again, you can make that argument with over the last 4 races with McLaren potentially being that fastest team, but simply not executing across a race weekend. And yeah, I think it'll be very, very interesting to see how things develop in that development race, in that battle in the top 4 in the second half of the season. And of course, the big news, kind of finishing up this video, is that Lewis Hamilton, of course, is leaving at the end of 2024, jumping ship to Ferrari. When he made that move before the season started, and again looking at how things were after the first 6 races, looked like a pretty smart move. Ferrari were Red Bull's closest challenger, and Mercedes were having a lot of struggles. But now, Mercedes are arguably the best team in F1. Ferrari are the 4th best team by I think a good margin over the last month or 2 months or so. So again, it's looking like a bit of an odd move now. But again, it's a move for next year. It's not a move for right now. And again, it's a move with an eye to 2026. So really interesting to see how that plays out. Of course, Hamilton moving to a new team for the first time in over a decade, and of course that means there's an empty seat at Mercedes. And again, it's still undecided as of recording of this video, but it will likely be Kimi Antonelli, the F2 rookie, who again, 17 years of age, so very, very young. Definitely a bit of a gamble. Definitely expect quite a bit of a learning curve over the next year or so. But if this guy is another Verstappen level talent, in order to make sure that you have a seat available for him, unfortunately, some of these hard decisions, such as for example not signing Carlos Sainz, would have to be made. And again, it's something that's yet to be decided. I guess in theory, other drivers could still be in contention. A guy like Bottas. Again, there's Sainz's rumored exit clause as well, if for whatever reason they decide not to go with Antonelli. But at the end of the day, I think we have a very exciting F1 season ahead of us for 2025, and I think for Mercedes as well, it will be really interesting, that dynamic between Russell and Antonelli. But again, there you go. There's my mid-season look at Mercedes. And again, we have 3 teams left with Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren. So again, I'll be doing those over the next couple days. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.